I've recently started Fusion 360. I'm probably about 10 hours in, and I was able to make this wheel. I've been really enjoying Fusion 360, so let's go over how to make this, or at least how I made it. I did not use surfacing, and that would have been a great way to make a wheel too. So if you're not familiar with surfacing, this could be the video for you. Let's get started by making either this exact wheel or one much like it. I'm going to start with a new design, and let's start by creating a sketch on this face, and I'm going to start by making a mounting plate. Let's make that 5.5 inches in diameter. We'll make a second circle, and we can make that vertical with the origin. And we'll give that a dimension of something like 2.25, and we'll give this a diameter of something like 1/2 inch. And let's go ahead and extrude that. So we'll extrude this profile. We'll go a distance of say 0.5 inches. That looks about right. And I can immediately do a circular pattern to cover all the wheels. I think it's a little bit more efficient to do a pattern than to sketch it out. So we'll go with pattern, circular pattern. Let's see. I've got this object selected. Axis will be here. It's a wonderful feature to add the axes in like that in the graphics display. We'll say OK, and there's our pattern. The next thing that I want to do is maybe make a sketch for my spoke, and I can do that right on this face. I'm going to start with a center point arc off of the origin, and Fusion already knew that I wanted to make that coincident onto the edge of my face, and by making them horizontal, we've only got 1 degree of freedom, and I really like the way that it illustrates the degrees of freedom. So to sure that up, let's give this a dimension. We're going to call that 1.95 inches. I'm going to make a 3-point arc now. And I'm going to make this horizontal to its center point so it ends on vertical, going straight out. We can give that a radius, and I'd like to make that 1.75 inches. From here, we'll do a line and a line and a line. We'll do an angle. .135, 1 inch. This point to the origin, we're going to make 1.675, so that the spoke protrudes in a little bit. And I can go ahead and select these two, make them horizontal, so we have more of a symmetric feel to it. And also, I'll come up here and choose equal length between these two. Oh, but I've got a over-defined error, so maybe we won't. Since they're horizontal, that's pretty good. I guess the last thing to do is add an arc. Oh, that's a center point arc. We'll add an arc on the other side here. We're going to choose equal between these two. We're going to take here and here, make it horizontal, and there we're fully defined. So I'll finish that sketch. Let's move on to the next one. I think we'd be wise to make an outer body for the rim. So let's create a sketch here, and let's get cracking on that other sketch here. So I'm going to make this horizontal with the origin. I can make that a simple distance of 1 inch. Next thing to do, we'll grab a 3-point arc and another 3-point arc. I'm going to choose tangent between these two, and we're going to make that horizontal so that these points will be tangent to vertical. and make another vertical line. I meant to snap those together, so we'll make those coincident. And I'm going to choose this line. I'll choose the equal relation between these two lines, so they're both an inch. And the question is, how much do we want to offset these arcs? We're going to go from here to here. We're going to make that 0.15. Oh. Except I don't think I've got my tangent relation. I guess I do, but it's snapping in the wrong way, so maybe I'll step it down to 1, and then 0.5, and then 0.15. That looks about right. I'm going to bring these a little bit closer together, these two arcs, and I'm going to highlight them, make sure that they're equal. That'd be a great constraint to have as well. Well, actually they shouldn't be equal because we're talking about having a consistent thickness, and one would be an outer radius and the other one would be an inner radius. So let's get rid of that constraint on second thought to keep a consistent bending profile. But the next thing that I'd want to do is add a 3-point arc up here and connect that into a line. And I know I ought to be using the actual tool that converts a line into a 3-point arc. That would be handy. Let's grab here and say 135, and then grab a 3-point arc here, and I love that it added that tangent. We'll select these 2 points and make them horizontal. We're going to come up here with a straight line. Oh, I accidentally drew 2, so instead I'll add in my 3-point arc. Again with the tangent tool, and we'll select these 2 and make them vertical. Okay, so this is the point where I get to choose some of the other dimensions, like what rim diameter do I want. Let's try something like a 18-inch wheel, so that would be 9-inch, we call it a radius, I guess. And then from this outer point to here, we can offset that by something like 0.75 inches. I can do the same thing from here. Oh, I got 2 points selected there. From here to here, let's go with something like 1 inch. And then let's make an outer radius. Let's establish that if we're going to add thickness on this side, our outer radius is going to be 0.25, right, 1/4 inch. And that means that this is an inner radius, and let's say we want to have 1/8 inch thickness, so that would be, of course, a 1/4 inch minus an 1/8 inch is an 1/8 inch, so that's our remaining radius. We move that back down where it belongs. So since these have basically the same concavity as the way you can think about it, then we'll make those equal, and this has the same concavity as that, so we can make that equal here. And then I have a concavity going this way, which I can make these equal. And that defines most of our sketch, but the question is, what width do we want on the rim? To answer that, I'm going to go with, say, something that's 8 inches wide. And to do that, we go to our 0 point, right? This is going to be a 0 offset, and this is where you decide your offset to. With that fully defined, let's do an offset function here. Ask me which select sketch curves to offset. We're going to say negative 0.125, and OK. And there we go. So we've got a consistent profile that's been offset. The last thing to do is this here. And now we would probably want to mirror some sketch entities. So in order to mirror, I'm going to create a construction line, right? We're going to create a line from here to the origin, and then I highlight this line, construction. Now I can say mirror, or I can just choose it from over here. We're going to select objects, and then we can select mirror line. It gives me a nice preview. We'll say finish sketch. And one thing that I want to check is to make sure that I have an enclosed volume. It looks like I do. You can see a difference in shade from the inside of the sketch to the plain background. So make sure that, yeah, it doesn't look like there's a solid line there. So we've done everything correctly. The next thing I can do is to start my revolve. And that's kind of enjoyable because you start to see the wheel kind of coming together. We're going to say revolve. We're going to choose a profile, which I would much like to make my sketch. And then we're going to choose axis, vertical axis. And that is looking kind of wheel-ish to me. So we'll say OK on that. Next thing to do is make a second sketch for our spoke. Let's do that by creating a sketch. Actually, it might be, let's finish sketch actually. I can delete that, didn't mean to do that. Let's instead construct an offset plane to this plane. We'll make that, if it's an 18-inch wheel, then we'll go 9 inches, and that's the correct direction that I would like to go. You'll notice it corresponds to the side that I have this first sketch. I can choose this plane, sketch, and well, here we go. Let's make another sketch. I like to loft the same number of entities to the same number of entities. I don't know if Fusion is sensitive to that or not, but it works well no matter what platform you use to do it that way. Let's use the vertical relation on this line, and I'm going to make this line a construction line. I'm going to go with a 3-point arc. And actually, before I get too deep, I'd probably be wise to give this a dimension. So let's go with 2.5. I want my 3-point arcs to end on vertical, so I'm going to select these two lines and make sure it's horizontal to its center point of rotation. Grabbing another 3-point arc, vertical, or tangent to vertical, and then choose equal and make sure that these arcs have the same radius. I could probably go a step further, and it looks like the endpoints are horizontal anyways. Next thing I'll do, create a line, and another line. I want to use the same angle, so go with a dimension of 135 degrees. I want this to be about 1 inch wide, and I want to give this an overall width of 3.5 inches. Maybe I can choose these arc endpoints and choose horizontal. I'll make the other one 135 degrees as well. I think one of the last things to do is give this an overall height. We're going to say something like 0.73. And I'm going to make these arcs tangent to horizontal, and that gives us a spoke profile. But when I look at it, I don't really like the way that looks. So I'm going to Control Z, and I'm going to give this a height instead. Let's go with something like 0.45. And that looks a little bit more realistic. So we're going to finish sketch. And there we've got two nice sketches. The last thing I'll do is maybe a little spline to unite the two. I'm going to create another sketch here, and I'm going to create a control point spline. Fit point spline I have less taste for, so you can always come here and choose control point spline if you don't have it already. I'm going to do a 4-point spline. Whoops, but I 1, 2, 3, 4. Next thing, I guess to better see, I'll hide my bodies and get normal to my sketch. Select these two, horizontal. This and this will be vertical, and that covers the profile that we want. Then I just have some simple dimensions to make. This point is going to be probably 3.25 inches, let's say. This one here, 1.25. I'm going to finish that sketch. And show my body again. Let's go with the loft. Our profiles to select here. To, not that point rather, but that inner profile. And I have a rail that I can select to be here. And instead of a cut operation, let's do a join. And there we have it. Okay, with this loft completed, let's circular pattern. I'm going to choose this object, this axis, and we're going to make 5 of these around the axis, and OK. Now you can see the spoke is poking through the inner wall there, which I find unpalatable. I'm going to create a sketch really on either of the two planes that are not normal to the center axis of the wheel. And if I create a basic line, then some of these lines become selectable. I choose coincident, then I can choose the endpoint of this line in coincident. Same here. Oh, but that's the wrong line. Coincident, coincident. And now we're running along the very outer edge of this wheel. And choose a line, and yep, that encompasses what I want it to encompass, so that looks good. We're going to make sure that these are parallel to horizontal, and then one dimension to shore everything up. Let's say that that's 2 inches for simplicity. Finish the sketch. We're going to do a revolve right around that center axis, and we have it set to cut 360 one side. Very good. So we've eliminated the protruding spoke problem that we had run into. Now we can add some detail to the wheel. I sure like to go with something like a chamfer. There it is. So if I chamfer these something like 0.125, looks like a reasonable chamfer for some nuts to go on. Say OK to that. We can choose this face, create a sketch for a center hole, as wheels tend to have. We'll make a diameter on that, say 2 inches. We'll finish, and then we'll do an extrude cut. So we'll select our profile here. We're going to change distance to all, and notice it cuts it out for us right there, and it has cut pre-selected. With that, we actually probably could have dimensioned those off the same chamfer, but that's alright. Give it a 0.125 chamfer. Alright, next I want to make a valve to fill up the tire with a valve stem. So I'm going to create an angle plane, plane and angle. I'll choose this line. I'm going to say 45 degrees, and it's giving me, of course, this angle, which would run me into the face of a spoke over here. So I'm going to specify plus 90, and that tilts me in a direction where I have this nice empty face right here. So I'm going to say OK. And this plane is a little bit wonky, so let's see if I extend that and create a sketch. Yeah, but my I don't have an origin that's really centered, so I'm going to be a little bit judicious, or try to be a little bit judicious about what my center actually is. I'm going to create a dimension here. Perhaps we're going to offset that ½ an inch. Looks about right. .25. I don't know what size valve stem holes are. 0.5, I guess. That's maybe a bit big. 0.375. Alright, so I want to make sure that this is centered on the face. And now that I think about it, I can get rid of this dimension. Let's be exact here. If I make a line, and I make it for construction, I can come over here and pull out the center point right there. So if I make these two vertical, then I know that that's in the middle. I'll choose coincident instead. These 2 points and these points there. So now I've got a construction line with my little circle coming off. Alright, now I want to choose a line. We're just going to draw an arbitrary line. Again, making it for construction. Notice it's already preset to be vertical. Choose these 2 points and coincident. Choose this and coincident. And now I can choose equal. Boom, we're centered and fully defined. So we'll choose finish sketch. And I want to cut that. Extrude. Cut. Profile. I've already got a profile pre-selected and it looks like the right one. I'm going to say all. And there's my valve stem hole. So that is reasonably realistic wheel. You probably want to add some fillets. And you have some kind of cool options, like you can right click on this face and say delete and get kind of a different spoke profile if you want to. I don't think that's an amazingly cool profile, but you know, you can experiment with all sorts of stuff when you go to delete faces, or just delete the entire feature. I have a 4-spoke wheel. But yeah, add some fillets if you'd like to, and hope this video was helpful. If it was, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.